Hi there, this is Katherine. Thank you so much for turning in to another episode of the Digital Marketing Victories podcast. Before we get into this month's episode, I just want to share with you the ways that you can support the podcast if you're finding the episodes helpful. You can send me a donation at buymeacoffee.com/DMV podcast. Any and all level of donation would be very much appreciated. Help me offset the cost of producing the podcast. I'd also encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter so that you don't miss a future episode or any other news about the podcast. And to do that, you go to wostrategies.com/newsletter. Okay, on with our episode. Welcome to the Digital Marketing Victories podcast, a monthly show where we celebrate and learn from the changemakers in digital marketing. Great digital marketers understand that people are the most challenging part of doing their jobs. And this show focuses on the people part of digital marketing wins, what tactics or skills the guests use to align people with their marketing strategy. I'm your host, Katherine Watier, the owner of SEO Strategist LLC. We focus on increasing organic discovery for our enterprise-sized, science-focused clients. Thank you for joining me. Let's get into it and celebrate our victories. So today we're joined by Adam Gent. He's a technical SEO consultant and product manager. He's worked for companies like moneyco.uk, Ladbrokes Books, Sports and Bath Store. He's worked as a product manager at DeepCrawl, that's now Lumar, for a number of years. And he's the author of the SEO Sprint. So this episode is going to be perfect for you if you're curious about what kind of workflows you could adopt as an in-house SEO to get more of your recommendations implemented, how to prioritize your technical SEO work, how to leverage case studies to persuade others, and he's got some really great tips there, and how a product manager approach to SEO might make your efforts more successful. So Adam, welcome to the show.
Hello, Katherine. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So can you tell us more about your background, how you got into SEO and product management?
Yeah, how to get into SEO. Just like everyone, I stumbled into it. I fell into it. I just came out of uni. I did my master's, and I couldn't get a job in what I wanted to do. / took a master's in, which is like sustainability and consultancy, which is a whole other thing. And I just got a job as a lowly what do they call them? Off-page SEO analyst or whatever they're called, which is just link builder. Yeah. And then I moved my way up, and I just enjoyed it so much. I've just been 8 years in like agency side in the north of England, companies like Branded 3, Salt Agency, being very technical based. Quite enjoyed technical stuff, working with developers, agency side, working with client developers, working with Branded 3's in-house developers. And then Salt, I got to become even more technical because Salt Agency is the kind of the technical SEO agency of the North, still going strong. And I moved somehow, I still don't know how, I got a job at DeepCrawl as a part of the professional services team, who were basically just technical SEOs in-house at DeepCrawl, using DeepCrawl and helping clients with DeepCrawl, like using it, managing it, etc. And then I just bothered the head of product, Alec Bertram, and again somehow became a product manager and did that for, well, it was professional services for like 6 months, and then 3 months, 6 months, I can't remember, and then 2 and a bit years as a PM at DeepCrawl. And then I help build software and prioritize things and workflows and get things delivered, and it changed my mindset of how to work with client developers. It made me realize how bad I was at working with developers, which is we can get into that if you would like. And yeah, it also kicked off my interest in the topic of delivery, I guess, product management, project management, engineering best practices, agile, because we're not exposed to it as SEOs, really. If you go to Brighton SEO, as I've just been to Brighton SEO, we don't really talk about it that much, but it's very much ingrained in the training and culture of those teams. And because obviously SEO, you have to work with those teams to get things done. I just find it fascinating that I literally, when I worked at DeepCrawl, my SEO skills kind of stayed the same, but my communication, project management, discovery, validation, business acumen, all of that skyrocketed in terms of skills. I call it the skill stack. Everyone has their like skill stack of things they add to their skills as they go through life and work in different companies and in different careers. And that was for me just this huge opportunity to realize that, again, how bad I was at working with developers and getting things done. And then and now I've been a consultant writing for the SEO Sprint, consulting with clients, working with dev teams, design teams, product teams to implement SEO I call them SEO features, SEO projects, really, that drive results. And that's me up until today, where I jumped on this call and podcasting with yourself.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously that's the meat of this podcast. I think there's a big gap. If you're an SEO trying to grab that skill set at the shows, how to actually communicate to get your stuff implemented. There's plenty of like how to figure out what the problem is and how to document the problem, maybe, but how to actually communicate that in a way where somebody you generally do not directly manage will help you out. And most of the doing of our recommendations are people we don't directly manage, and that part is really sticky, and we don't talk about it enough in the industry, and it's a detriment, because I think a lot of SEOs stumble in that one spot.
Interestingly, as you say that, it in product it's called leading without authority. Like, we'll get into this, but I was fascinated by the fact that I was a PM and I could almost go around the company and ask all these questions, and everyone was very open to talking to me. You know what I mean? Like leading without authority, building trust with the teams. I was fascinated by it because as an SEO, if you ever wandered around as an SEO, like asking questions, it was a very different experience. So even just that, I don't know if it's just a mindset change or a title change.
Is it the title? You think it might be the title?
Probably the title, but it was just like, oh yeah, he's here to like solve problems and he cares about the customers versus SEO, or it's just, I don't know, the perception of SEOs. I don't know, I just found it a really interesting, like complete dynamic switch from worrying about indexing and crawling and rankings and revenue, and still worrying about revenue, but it was like solving problems, but you could almost navigate the spaces between teams. You navigated around them and led without authority, and it was just fascinating that you say that, and it's like as a PM you have to do that. Like that's something you have to do. So yeah, I'm really interested and really.
I was about to say, I'm going to have a whole other podcast episode about whether or not we need to ditch the SEO title. I've been in those conversations for the last month. I obviously do a lot of senior strategy stuff, and I've had people be like, oh, she's overpriced for an SEO. It's just very funny, because somebody inside this organization I'm pitching, and the CEO knows me, and the CEO is like, well, she's much more than an SEO. And I was like, yeah, I probably should ditch the title.
Yeah.
Right? The title gets in the way sometimes. I've had those conversations where people are like, are you shady? I'm like, oh, I'm not that kind of an SEO. Anyway, it's sticky.
No, yeah. Again, if you do that episode, I'd love to join, because I'm very interested in chatting around titles and perceptions of people. People naturally group things together, like, because they have names, and I think SEOs, unfortunately, with history, fall into that, unfortunately. But yeah. Anyway.
All right. So clearly I got a future episode.
There you go.
So let's get back to the product management part, though.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about this concept of treating websites like products. So how does this mindset switch impact you as an SEO professional?
So I call it solving impactful problems. Okay. It's very simple as a concept, right? A website is a product. Taking it back to the basics. So people visit like a business and they like your product. Businesses ship products, services, Amazon, Walmart, etc. I'm trying to think of American brands, because your audience.
Those are good ones.
Yeah. But when they ship those things, the point of them is people like them enough to pay for them. Now, whether they're good for you or bad for you is another question entirely. But if people find value in that, if they like it, if it solves a different job pain point, they'll pay for it, right? And that's the basic like framework, mental model I communicate when I talk about solving impactful problems. When you're working on a website, okay. Oh, sorry. Before I get into that, just as a PM, your job is to identify solving those impactful problems. So what is that target customer? What is that pain point? and what is the solution you're coming up with to solve it. And then you ship those things. They're called features in product and engineering. You ship things, right? And if you are solving that problem, if people find value in it, they will pay for it. Now, it's really hard to do that, right? Like 90% of startups, I think in America at least, like they don't work in like 5 years or something. They end because it's hard to do. It's hard to find, it's hard to think about the target customer and solve the pain point and find a solution that's business, that can actually sustain a business for a long time. And then products can also kind of decline as well, which is another topic entirely. But they're the basic building blocks, foundations of business and products, right? And now you're bringing in websites, okay? So same principle, right? You ship things that should help the target audience find your services, your products. And again, great, found this thing. Zapier is always kind of brought up as an example, right? Zapier integrates quite a lot of its product into its like pragmatic, pages. So it tries to target people for specific, like Google Sheets connects to Gmail, or Google Sheets connects to different applications, and you're finding them through that, and you're finding their service, and you can sign up because it's free for a certain tier, and then you might start paying, right? That's an example of solving impactful problems through and treating your website kind of like a product, because the product experience nowadays, especially for a lot of SaaS companies and for e-commerce, right? The website and the product are pretty much the same thing, right? Because you go to an e-commerce store, you look at the images, you look at the reviews, you look at the descriptions, right? The experience on the website is almost kind of like the product. You get sent the product and you'll start using it. But that first experience of treating the website like a product, shipping these features, shipping those things that solve those impactful problems, help people find it, the right audience at the right time, because not every click is equal, right? Because you've got, really hot clicks, like people are trying to find that solution, or you've got really cold clicks where people are still trying to, top of funnel, still trying to find those, like, maybe the topics or the ideas that kind of swirling around their head, trying to find something, just on the fringe of the problem, right? So really, when I'm talking about a website as a product, you're having that mindset of shipping things, solving problems, helping people find things, integrates a lot with the product or the service of the company, and helps get customers that pay for things, okay? Now, the really important part of all of this is this outcome mindset shift. And again, I've talked this on the newsletter, but an outcome mindset shift basically is, instead of thinking about the deliverables that you ship, think about the behavior you're changing in your target audience to drive results, okay? As SEOs, right, we have the same problems as product teams, in that businesses are like, we need to ship, all of these features, and sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to it. They just ship these features. Then then they're like, oh, we've done all this, we've spent all this dev time, but it hasn't resulted in any revenue or any driving any sales. And it's a feature factory mentality, it's called, because you just want to keep shipping these things. Dark mode is an example, right? There's like lots of memes on the product community of you ship dark mode, but you've got no customers. Do you know what I mean? It's just that kind of you're not thinking about, right, what is the thing that's you could ship one thing and drive so many sales because you've really understood the target audience, their problems, and the solution to that. And sometimes, honestly, it's a lot simpler than you think, but people get caught up in politics, their opinions, and you're not treating your website, like a product. You're just trying to ship all of this content, or maybe optimize every single link, or ship every piece of content, try and answer every question in Google search results or your keyword research. But have you really understood the target audience, their pain points, their jobs, and how are you solving them? How is your content either solving it or helping drive people to understand the product or the service, being part of that product experience? That's what I mean by product, a website as a product.
But I'm hearing as an SEO, if you want to be more of a project management focus, I'm hearing two things very clearly. One is the reporting needs to shift, so you can demonstrate those two. But then I'm also hearing like a strategy change, it sounds like to me. Yeah, or delivery of the strategy that is different.
Yeah, so I don't like the word strategy, if I'm being honest, because we just attach strategy to like tactics. But yeah, strategy really
Or
starts
focus
with
of this sprint, whatever. I don't know what term you're using, but
yeah. No, what I'm talking about website as a product, you really need to, in product, it's called discovery, right? But it's just research and insights, which is just, discovery is just a fancy word for research and insights, right? Do the target audience research, and then I'm trying to understand, like, why are they trying to come to this site? Okay, why would they use Google search or Bing search or whatever search engine? TikTok apparently nowadays, yeah. Why would they be coming via search, right? And if you that's the foundation upon which I try and understand with some of my clients now. I'm like, is this a good channel fit? Like, is this product, this service? Like, have you done PPC? Have you tried email? Do you know what I mean? Like, why invest in SEO as a channel? Because it's a long, it takes a long time compared to other channels to start to see, returns, especially for like a SaaS company or a small company. For large companies, obviously you have the authority, the trust there to start, ranking a lot quicker. But still, like, why is SEO as a channel a fit for this, right? And when I'm reporting as well, what is that? They call it like a North Star metric, but I much prefer the outputs and inputs kind of framework, right? So what are the things? Like, I have a client right now, he can tell me in his like B2B company, he can tell me exactly the 9 or so levers that make up a successful deal, right? And we can track that through this system that I've helped working with them to build. Traffic comes in, we can tell which deals are going to be good and which deals aren't going to be a success, just by understanding those 9 key things. Have they done this? Have done this? Are these? And then there are features attached to each of those 9 things. So that you can fetch this information, you can pull this information, connect this in. Do you know what I mean? That's an outcome mentality. What are those behavior changes? Because if the sales team don't send this information to the client, it won't really, probably, likelihood, according to the data, probably won't turn into a good deal or won't turn into a deal at all. So it's trying to find those inputs that add up to, okay, this is an outcome that we can track to see there's a positive change in user behavior here, right? Classic example is Core Web Vitals for SEO. Core Web Vitals, for some bizarre reason, is lumped in with SEO and rankings. And every SEO I've talked to has had disastrous results when trying to measure Core Web Vitals against rankings and traffic. But if you actually look at the case studies, the case study database, which you can talk about in a minute,
right?
Every single case study looks at conversion rate, basket in average order value or number of products in the basket. Do you know what I mean? It looks at what are the behavior metrics? What are the things, the input metrics that are going to add up to Core Web Vitals was successful because we drove, more revenue because more people are adding products to the basket and average order value goes up. Do you know what I mean? It's those kind of input metrics that are adding up to revenue going up. That's the thinking of outcome kind of mindset shifts. It's not just we're going to do Core Web Vitals because Sitebulb told us that it's poor. We're doing it because we want to drive revenue to the business, because this is shown by case studies, by our own experiments, that it's going to be it's going to help us drive business results that they care about, right? That's like outcome mindset shift. You're minimizing deliverables but maximizing changing user behavior, really.
So you get on board with a new client or you're in-house and you've done your discovery research / audit, whatever you're going to call it. You sort of got a lay of the land. You figured out, and maybe you've pivoted their channels, right? So you figured out they're on the right channels. You've looked at the metrics. You know that their reporting is accurate. You've added, I don't know, user tracking if it's not there. So you got all the stuff you need to measure end outcomes, right? Laying the foundation of all that. Okay, great. But now you got this pile of stuff to fix, right? In theory. Or levers that you want to move.
Yeah.
How do you figure out which one? And then when you get down to the weeds of that, how do you compile an effective, persuasive document or presentation or whatever it is to get the rest of these team members you don't manage on board to get that thing through the pipeline and executed? That's my burning question always.
Just the question, right? How do
Well,
I
and
get
is there a
how do I
product
get
management
buy-in?
approach, right? Is there something about product management that makes all that easier?
I'm going to pull in product management. Is just a load of different things, like different topics, like pulled in together. So I'm going to be covering. I'm going to talk you through it, but just bear in mind, I'll try and be clear about pulling different topics in, like business consulting and things like that, right? Communication and things like that. So I'll start from the beginning. So I'm going to take your scenario. Let's say, let's give it e-commerce, right? Because I think e-commerce is fairly straightforward it's easier to track, right? So you understand, you've done your target audience research, you understand the customers, loosely understand the customers, what everyone is talking about. You understand that there are a set of products, a set of categories that are higher priority, and you understand that you've done your audit, or you've begun to do the usual crawling. You've set up the tracking, you make sure that's all correct. So you're beginning to get some data into your workflow. The key thing here, right? And this is true e-commerce, markets, B2B, wherever you are, right? You need to really think about business orientation, okay? When I was in-house, the CEO announced, like, this is the direction we're going, and just went through a whole presentation. But one thing always stuck with me, right? He showed a graph, right? A very simple, graph, and basically showed that all of our competitors, SEO tool competitors, are going this way, right? They're trying to be SEO suites. They're trying to be, all the bells and whistles, all the features, all of this, all of that. But we're going this way. So he if anyone's listening, he went to the right. So everyone went up. I realized I went like everyone like that, and no one can see what I'm doing.
Right.
Everyone went up, okay, and we were going right. So we were different. That's the direction we were going in. So we weren't doing the SEO suite back then, right? What we were focused on is helping that tool be the best tool to help tech SEOs identify problems, get buy-in, etc. And he was like, we're going this way. And that, for me, still sticks with me today, because what that was him trying to communicate the vision, the direction that business is going in, right? And all the strategic priorities will revolve around that vision, right? Where we're going. So, business orientation in e-commerce, right? You need to understand, where is that business direction going? Because as an SEO, as an employee, you're not, unless you have massive sway with the CEO or the leadership team, the management team, C-suite, I guess you Americans call it, you would be very difficult to massively change the direction. We'll call it ship, right? It's hard to it's a huge, massive ship going one direction. It's very hard to move that ship unless you have real sway. So you need to understand where it's going. Like, okay, they have all these products. Are you just targeting the US? Are you going international at all? Do they care about, the user experience? Is there a particular product that they care about? Do you know what I mean? Like, is there a particular set of initiatives that they really want to drive? Obviously, it's about revenue, right? Because it's business. It's always about revenue. But you need to understand the business, or I call it business orientation, the direction that's going, right? And this is something that Tom Critchlow at SEO MBA talks about, something that Will Critchlow talks about. You need to listen to what they care about, because it's very hard to get buy-in on technical, tactical things if you can't connect that work to what they care about. So that's number one, okay? Number two, right? And that's by the business consultancy thing, by the way. And that's what I noticed as a PM as well. I could get things done, but there was a certain strategic direction that needed to be positioned at. And I still take this into account today. Working with another client, that's what I've been doing. Like, he wanted to go a certain direction with this, finance company, and I helped him I was like, actually, SEO wise, that makes perfect sense. Same with this e-commerce company that we're fictionally working for. There'll be a set of these strategic initiatives, and you need to listen and make note and write it down and think about how what you're doing can be fit into these things. Okay, and actually have, interestingly, I have a podcast on the SEO Sprint where Arij Abduali, I can never say people's names, she talks about that when she moved to a company. She looked at the roadmap, understood the strategic initiatives, and she just moved in SEO into those things. Are you working on faster navigation? Cool. Like, great. Like, you need to just worry about these things. Oh, you're worried about you creating new categories? You're updating the main nav? Cool. I can help you SEO these things. Okay. It's just a skill you need to learn and sit down and listen and just absorb in the information, but you just need to do that, right? Number two, you need to connect your SEO work. So you have, okay, I've got the strategic initiatives. You need to connect your work to a problem. Okay. Interestingly, as SEOs, we communicate these technical things that need fixing. Okay. The biggest issue, I would say problem, but I was going to talk about problems a lot, so I'll say the word issue. The biggest issue with that is it's not connected to anything. Do you know what I mean? It's just like a lots of lists of things which people could implement if they have the drive to do so. But if, like we've said, we need to lead without authority. We need to get people, involved. You need to connect it to a problem, right? A problem that is worth solving, right? That is a lot of what business consultancy is about. Okay, that's what PMs do, product managers do. I've identified a problem. Why is that problem worth solving? Okay, and what are the strategic things we need to do, the initiatives, the projects, the roadmap that we need to do it? Okay, it's about connecting your work, like literally just forming this kind of understanding we're overcoming this challenge, and this is why we're overcoming it. Again, and then you're tying in those strategic initiatives to that problem, right? That problem should be helping the business move forward. Like for this e-commerce company, let's imagine that they want to go international in other English-speaking languages. Okay, instantly you would probably already know in your head, well, if you're going international, that means hreflang, that means translated content, that means like URL structure. Already you begin to naturally, as an SEO, if you're experienced, to know what you need to do because you know the technical things, but you just need to connect those technical things to a problem that you need to overcome. The problem being, well, if you want to grow revenue in those countries, like you need to do the right things, right? You've got the targets to hit. I know because I've listened to the strategic priorities. I know the goals. Great. Well, that's the problem we need to solve. Like we need to hit those targets, to overcome that obstacle. We need to achieve these initiatives, right?
So that sounds to me, because we've got, again, coming back to the technical SEOs that hopefully are listening, you've got a whole pile of stuff to do. And that means you strategically ignore things that aren't directly tied to moving a business objective. So keeping in mind the discovery, crawl, indexing, etc., anything that's potentially outside of that becomes a different initiative or gets put on the back burner permanently.
And so, so that problem, strategy-wise, is something I call. So for me, there's 4 types of strategies, 4 types of problems. That's an expansion problem, right? Mm-hmm. They've said we're going international, or the leadership team, the C-suite, like international, like that's how we're going to drive more revenue. That's how we're going to drive more business results. That's how we're going to, make more money. And you're like, cool. Well, here are the initiatives. The thing you have to be aware of, though, at the same time, while you're doing that problem, kind of identifying that problem, is you also need to be gathering allies and partnerships within the company, right? So to do those technical things, right, already you need the dev team on side, right? Mm-hmm. You can't do hreflang, the right folder structures, the right folder paths of international, without understanding the tech stack, without understanding their processes, without understanding what are they been asked to do, because going international is huge. probably a huge undertaking for like a massive website. You need to set up CDNs and make sure that the right people go to the right place, and start building out these new page templates, because you wish you could just copy and paste it from one place to another, but actually you may need to start thinking about user flows, because maybe different countries think differently. Your UX team, your product team, your dev team, this imaginary and content, your imaginary. Well, I'm going to keep content slightly separate just for now, for a reason. Keeps it. All those three teams they're focusing on their strategic initiatives, which is going to be probably international, right? So you need to be sitting there and working on site. Now, I highly recommend not just walking up to them and going, "I need these things for SEO." I would highly recommend sitting down and just listening to. This is what I did, by the way, and what I learned in-house and what I do now. Just sit down when you first, let's say you've just joined, right? And that was the first 2 weeks, right? Understanding those few things, started doing the audit. Right, cool. Well, now just sit down and ask the developer to take you through how the platform works, how the back end works, what are the SEO features and functionalities of this system, what does it do and how it works. Maybe it's the tech lead. Doing that when you first join is great, because naturally you need to know these things anyway, so you can ask these questions. It becomes a lot harder the more the longer you are at a company, but you can still ask these questions. I'm just a curious person, by the way, so I'm always asking questions, right? So I get in trouble. But you just need to explain how this system works, explain how these features work, and then you just like, what is it that you're like working on the next 3 to 6 months? And then they'll probably explain, because of we're going international, we're doing all these things. We've got this, and this, and this, and they're just explaining to you the challenges they're going to face, and the problems that they're trying to overcome, the things on their to-do list, right? Because they're going to have their own strategic priorities. And like, okay, great. And then you just keep doing that with product, and you do that with design, and then you also do it with content. Now, in this scenario, I'm going to put you with product, right? I'm not going to put you in marketing, right? Which I know for a lot of people might be controversial, but there's a reason why. So if you're in the product team and you're directly kind of lining into maybe the VP of product or the head of product or the product team, it's going to be a lot easier to be part of their processes, okay? To make sure that website is optimized and up to scratch, exactly what you want, because of something called Conway's Law. So Conway's Law is like a 50-year-old law. It's a very simple law, basically. I can't remember it now. the communication structure of your company will mirror, like the system they're building will mirror what the communication structure is of the team. So if SEO sits in another team and doesn't really communicate to the product engineering and dev team and design team, and they're building the thing, and that's the foundation upon which your international strategic work is going to sit is technical, right? And obviously content's important, naturally, but if decisions are made without you, well, then your system will mirror the communication structure of your company, of your teams. So I'm going to put you in product, right? Or you try and work in product, or you try and work within their processes as much as possible. If you're listening to this and you work in marketing, right? It's difficult, but there's absolutely, I haven't met generally a lot of engineers, developers, product people who aren't willing for like somebody to just join. Hey, can I just join like 1 or 2 meetings? I just want to better understand what's going on, because a lot of my work, my performance is based on what you're doing. I want to make sure it's all we're following the workflow or the recommendations I'm implementing. I haven't really met a lot of people who or developers or product people who are against that. I've met a lot of SEOs who kind of neglect that relationship, right? Just throw it over the wall and run away. But if you work in-house and this strategic initiative is going on, you're going to have to build those partnerships, those relationships with those teams, because it's key for you to get things done. Okay, because sometimes I've learned, and I've spoken to other SEO PMs, other tech SEOs, you don't always have to have, if you build really good trust with them, you don't always have to have a case study to do something, right? If it's low effort, you don't have to, it's pretty easy to add that, self-reference contact. Sure, no problem. I trust you. Do you know what I mean? But you have to build that trust up. It takes time.
So you mentioned throwing it over the wall and running away. So there's a fear, I think, with some SEOs about talking to devs. So 2 questions here. One, you mentioned the key, sit in on meetings early. Cool, but I don't know if that's the full extent of what you might do to build relationships. And 2, if you are an SEO that has that fear reaction when it comes to devs, what tips do you have?
Well, you say it isn't the key just sitting in on meetings, but remember, when you're sitting on meetings, you're absorbing through, I believe it's osmosis, maybe?
Yeah. But are you just doing it once? Are you just doing
it
the first 2 weeks?
No. It's a habit. It's a habit. It's a habit you form over time, and you want to keep that habit up, right? I've actually just written about this recently in the newsletter. You want to form those habits, right? You want to form those. I'm in this e-commerce company. I've got the strategic initiatives coming up. I do not just want to hand into, hreflang recommendations to the devs and just, just really hope they get it right. You want to form those habits of talking to them, like seeing them all the time. Even if it's just a week, like start with a weekly 30-minute meeting, right? Just a weekly 30-minute meeting. I did that with a client, and now I'm working as part of their product and dev and engineering team to do all sorts of features, right? Just a single meeting, 30 minutes every week, right? It takes about 2 months for people to form these habits, okay? So don't just give up after a month or 2 or 3 meetings if no one shows up. Keep pushing it, okay? Number 2, there's Slack channels. There's always a Slack channel. Join them, right? I was in lots of Slack channels in-house. I didn't understand a lot of it because they're talking dev stuff. But the best way that these teams communicate is through Slack, in terms of quickness, in terms of speed of being asked questions. And, just, hey, just introduce yourself. I'm the SEO. Any questions about SEO, any of these things, just let me know. Always have a monthly chat with tech leads, okay? Just again, keep doing that listening thing where you're like, oh, I just want to sit down and understand where you're coming from, with the product person, the dev person, the design person. I just want to understand what you're working on, and just get a better understanding of how the team works. You'll be surprised at how much that works. And just always, if you're going to talk to them, because if you're saying there that people are worried about talking to them, I've found the best, you don't have to be technical, right? But you do have to not waste their time and clearly communicate, okay? Now, devs are makers, right? They need long stretches of time to think things through, write code, solve problems, okay? You don't want to be slacking them every 5 minutes. You don't want to be booking meetings in the middle of the afternoon for 3 hours, okay? You don't want to tap them on their shoulder and just ask them one question, right? It's annoying. And it
breaks their workflow.
Yeah. I've done it, right? I've done it. So what you need to be is you need to just be mindful of their work there. They need like half-day units to solve problems. So I make sure that if I have a book a meeting, I make sure it's early in the morning, midday, or late afternoon, right? If it's just an SEO meeting, right? I always make sure that when I communicate using examples, right? Because examples are the quickest way to communicate what you're trying to get out of them. Hey, I've seen this problem, or hey, I want this thing built. Here is a terrible drawing, right? I've seen people draw using A4 sheets of paper, sketching, to try and communicate across what they need. You want concrete examples, right? Data, screenshots of the website, maybe even manipulating the website using Google Chrome, or working with a design team to get a design. Some devs won't touch a recommendation unless there's a design, right? So examples are really key to communicate, right? And always make sure that you're communicating like what the problem is, why it's worth solving. But again, once you start building up that trust, that why sometimes you can kind of, it's not always about why, sometimes it's about trusting you. But and then it's also about prioritizing it. So don't just keep coming them to like small, tiny things that don't really mean anything. You need to, when I talk to a dev, I always make sure that I'm giving them something that it's important, right? And it's not something like, why is the SEO asking us to fix these 404, like these 12 404s on these pages that nobody visits? It's really important that we discuss, this thing, because here's why, right? And I write these things down. Okay, before I talk to them, I write these things down. So what the problem is, like why it's important, here's an example. I just follow that flow. Just make sure that when I talk to them, I'm giving them something important, right? I'm not just bothering them because I'm geeky and excited about something. Although you can do that, but
I've built relationships where sometimes that's my moment. I had a great relationship with like the head of dev when I was at Ketchum, and sometimes if I got dorked out, I was like, "Oh my god, I just have to do this with you because you're going to be excited with me." But that's at the later stages of the relationship.
Exactly. Like, and you know what? Like just also talk to them. Like, I played like D&D. I played poker. I went and had lunch with them. And I chatted to other SEOs a few years ago and interviewed 15 in-house SEOs, and most of them did the same thing. Like, they treated the developers like human beings.
Yeah.
Can I grab you coffee? Can I just get your opinion on this while we go for lunch? I'll buy you lunch. You know what I mean? Just you're trying to build a relationship with these people. And there is going to be times where they're not reciprocating, or they're not all. There's always that dev, but generally I found that most are open to chatting. Just need to be respectful of their time, really.
And you would be surprised at how much the habit of touching base with people is can lead to success. So when I was in-house at Points of Light Foundation, running 1-800-volunteer.org startup, I think I was employee 2. And so drowning because I had no help. But I realized that in order for me I could only sell to people that were already a member of the Points of Light Foundation. So having a relationship with a membership person, super important. And she was very, did not want to help me right out of the gate. And I could not figure out why. I eventually figured out that what had happened before they started our initiative is they laid a bunch of people off. And so everybody thought we were taking their jobs. Yeah. Well, I still have to be successful. I can't just like quit at that point. So what I ended up doing was every Friday, again, like a habit, I put it on my calendar. I got up from my desk, no matter how drowning I was, and I walked around the entire office and chatted with people every Friday. And then we started hosting parties on behalf of our team. And, it probably took 6-9 months, and it wasn't quick, mind you. But lo and behold, I got to a moment where she pinged me. She's like, I got a new member. I think you might want to sell her the software. I was like, oh my God, I did it. But yeah, get up from your desk and like walk around if you're there physically, but book that meeting so that it doesn't fall off your calendar. You actually build the relationships and give it the time it needs.
And honestly, like, there's like a trust equation that I talk about. But one of the foundational parts of that equation is just taking interest in other people. Mm-hmm. And taking interest in what they're doing. It's not just, let's just do this SEO work, right? They're not factory workers. They're most are trying to solve problems by writing code, right? And I find just taking interest in them is a, not like you said, it's not a quick process, but it eventually pays off.
And in Dana Theus's episode, she's got a bunch of tips, but the one that resonates with me is that for a while there, she had like a Post-it note on her screen so that she would only ask questions, nothing but questions, which is perfect because it gets the other people talking. It lets you not talk as much. It's like guaranteed to start building a relationship, to be honest. So listen to that episode if you haven't already. Okay, so let's see. We've talked about prioritization a bit. We've talked about building a relationship. How about this? The part we haven't really talked about much is the letting go of things. So we've talked about how you ladder up the things that attach to a business focus.
Yeah.
But what if you've got something that you know is just, as an SEO, it makes you cry, and you're having trouble laddering it up to a business focus? What do you do? What are the tips there for people to let go of that bone?
I guess you need to find the right time. So when I worked in-house, there was a list of things that need to get done, but we're always put on the back burner because of these strategic priorities, right? And I think everyone can relate to that. There's always something that needs to be doing, and just as an SEO, like the thing is, as an SEO, there's also, you've got to remember that there's UX, there's dev, there's product, there's content, there's sales, there's marketing, right? Everybody has that list. There's a list on everybody's desk of things they'd love to do but can't get done. So maybe try Core Vitals is a good example where sometimes you will do an audit and it's like, this website is slow as, it's just really slow. And you go and talk, and then you use that kind of partnership thing. So you go and talk to the devs and you understand, the system and the back end. And they're like, we really want to improve the performance of this website, right? I actually had that. They were like, I really want to improve the performance of the website. I just can't get them to make it a priority. And then you just go, okay, well, UX, dev, and SEO are like, hey, there's actually business reasons why we should be doing this. And then you put forth, they just need someone to help them put forth a business case. As a PM, that is your role to validate and put forward ideas and understand the why. The devs bring the how, right? So sometimes it's identifying partners who might be able to help you get it done. It's also making sure you're doing it at the right time. Because there's no point trying to improve Core Vitals if the whole platform's moving in 6 months' time, right? So maybe you could do it then. You're like, hey, could we also think about this, because it's a good opportunity to do this, right? Because you're literally replatforming. So those are the two things I think that I would use to. I mean, obviously building trust. Because sometimes there are things that I've done with the devs where, there's never any business case for it, but the effort of doing it isn't really that hard. So I'd also just say, understand the effort, build a relationship with the devs, and sometimes you can get things done just because it's really not that much work. Yeah, we can fit it in. Give us a ticket. All right, yeah, great. Okay, cool. Yeah, no worries. We'll do that now. We trust you. You're always giving us things that are a priority. You're always giving us things that, see business results. You're sharing that with us.
So say you're, for whatever reason, low on a little trust because maybe you're new, and you can't do testing because your website's a little bit too small for that. So we're going to lean on the other one, which you've mentioned a few times, but we haven't really talked about yet, this case study database. Tell me more about your amazing case study database. Mostly because I had an informal one in Trello that was not public, and I'm like, oh, thank God, somebody actually has it on the internet that all of us can reference. So tell me more about it.
So I've been collecting weird case studies. It was just it's just like a hobby. It's just I collect them because I've used them in the past to get things done. Right? It's like, I don't think content pruning on large websites works, Adam. Well, here's this, and this case study showing that actually overall you can get maybe a 15 to 25% increase in overall traffic just from not removing every single piece of content, but having a look and doing a content audit and really understanding if every page either needs to be improved, removed, or redirected, right? And I've just been doing it for a few years, and I was just I think I kept seeing people being like, got a case study for this. And I was like, oh yeah, I've got that. Or people on Slack, communities like, I've got a case study for this. And I was like, oh yeah, here's one, explained. Oh, that's great. And I was just like, there seems to be this lack of swipe files, a coffee book of tests, right? Product teams, UX teams have these studies, these swipe files to hand all the time. And I was like, well, SEOs don't. We're not very good at capturing information and putting it into a publicly accessible thing, because everyone wants to like hoard their own, right? Keep their cards really close to their chest, even though, I mean, most tactics you can learn just by applying it for a few years and then realizing, okay, these things work, these things don't. But there's always that, if you work in-house or if you work with certain clients, there's always that situation where you're like, well, I've never migrated 14 websites in a headless CMS before. Like, there's situations where you're like, I can't lean on my personal experience, or nobody in my community or my network has any case studies, which is usually the go-to, right, before you do ask publicly. Actually, if you do a bit of research, if you, like me, a bit of a nerd, and you just capture these things, I literally just a Notion database, just push these things using the Notion Chrome extension to Notion, like and then just go through it every week and just categorize it. I've been doing that for years, and it's also a case of going through and making sure you have the right ones, because some, like, nothing in the case study like folder of an agency is probably useful. I've literally seen case studies where they're like, we moved a keyword from position 9 to position 7, and I was like, okay, I can't use this. It's like, do you know what I mean? Where some are like, here's the results. We saw this revenue increase, this traffic increase, and this is what we did. And I'm like, and you can go and you're like, okay, so they improved internal linking, they, content pruned, they added this content, they did this, there's things that you can specifically tie into a situation where it's like, this is either a good test or it's going to help validate an opportunity, an idea I've had. And you can use that in product and dev teams, because they appreciate, all the ones I've worked in, they appreciate there is something, you've done some research and gone like, this isn't just a crazy idea I've had. There's actually documented public case studies of this seeing improvements, right? And because product teams love testing things and experiments, right? Quite a big part of their culture. They'll recognize that, right? And then they should be open to it, right? Again, another way to get buy-in for these strategic priorities. In terms of what you said there about prioritization, always remember, just a quick tip with prioritization, it isn't just a one-off thing. I think a lot of people, and this is something I learned as a PM, prioritization is a skill. It's not a one-off thing. It's not like high, medium, low 6 months ago, right? And now we're doing it again 6 months later, high, medium, low. It's like, I call it ruthless prioritization, and you are constantly, and the reason why you should work in the product engineering and design team, the engineering team, is that things will constantly be moving around, right? Your initiatives, right? Which order do we do them in? When do we do hreflang? Before URLs? When do we build the page templates? Before hreflang? Do you know what I mean? It's sequencing those initiatives, right? What order do we do it in? And then within the initiatives, there is a series of opportunities, I call them. So just like another level down, right? What are the sequence of ordering of those opportunities? Now, what you can do is you can group your initiatives by, like, I don't know, I've done it before where it's like, I need to fix like the facet navigation and the internal linking of 2 initiatives, right? 2 really important initiatives in optimizing a large e-commerce site. Big initiatives, within those there are opportunities, right? There's different things you need to do those things. And then you prioritize those. And then within those opportunities, there are tasks, right? There are small things that need to, those sweating the details, everything adds up. So if you complete the tasks and you complete the opportunities, you complete the initiatives. But that's all about sequencing things in order and working with the team directly to make sure that those things, those questions, those sequencing always adds up. Now, if you talk to SEO PMs, as I have, they'll all tell you that their roadmaps they've built to do these strategies, to build these, to get these cheap initiatives done, they change within the month. When the month into doing it, it changes, right? But you need to be on it, because you need to make sure, because if it gets out of sequence, people drop it because the priorities aren't there, it will be dropped. They won't pick it up for you because they got other things to worry about, because devs and product teams always have a lack of resource and time to get things done. Always in default setting in most companies, right? So you need to run with it effectively and chase the bus and be like, actually, you forgot this. You know what I mean? You need to make sure that they're it's always in their mind to do those things then that they've said that they would do.
So,
and that's prioritization, by the way, to me. It's not just a high, medium, low.
that sounds like a skill somebody needs to build. So what resources do you have where folks who haven't done that kind of work could get some experience or take a class or read a book? Do you have anything?
You can. So the SEO Sprint newsletter. I have a referral program, and I have within that referral program, there is a checklist. The first thing you can win, that if you refer 3 people, I will give you something called an SEO product sense checklist. And within that checklist, they are activities to help build that. It's called product sense, basically the ability to order and sequence things and like identify what needs to be worked on, what doesn't need to be worked on. There's a checklist in there, and I give you assignments, things to do to build those skills up. But honestly, like the best thing you can probably do is, like, if you work in a company where there's a PM team, shadow them and just watch over time how this initiative they're trying to get done, suddenly within it, things change very quickly.
No, that's helpful, because I'm aware of the fact that everybody has a unique experience going through your young life and school and advanced school and work experiences, right? And so some things that are innate to you might not be innate to everybody. So for instance, you're reminding me of the fact that I was a big 4-H'er, and one of the weird things I did with 4-H is Franklin Covey gave us their print organizers. This is back before computers, people. But there was I think it was a 3-hour workshop to how to organize your day, right? Mm-hmm. Which walks you through how to prioritize something. So that's like a weird, unique experience that I have. So I'm just trying to be aware that not everybody listening has the same experience as us, and they might need that little help up to figure out how to prioritize. So related to making sure our listeners get what they're looking for. So the soft skills bit, do you have anything other than what we've talked about, which is regular habits of meeting, that first meeting early on, regular other habits? Are there other sort of soft skills that you think are essential for SEOs to get, that you've got some thoughts around or resources?
Yes, writing.
Writing, okay.
Yeah, odd thing to say, but when you work in a product team, you communicate, like devs write code, designers build visuals and design, product people communicate, right? That's the thing you do, right? That's the job. And how do you communicate? Well, you write things down, you talk to people, and you present things. Turns out writing things down, super, super important skill. Because what I do, like okay, let's say we've got we're getting people bought into this e-commerce company. We've got those strategic initiatives set because we want them to drive more, international revenue. Okay, so how do you go from strategy to planning? What is that jump? What is that thing that helps you brief the dev team, the product team, the design team on what you need them to do? Mm-hmm. Well, you write things down. You write what is generally called a product requirement document. There are different names for it. I personally prefer a product brief, but basically it's a series of sections of questions that you ask. And if someone reads it, they understand the project, they understand why you're doing it, they understand the requirements, the specifications that you're trying to get them to do, understand the milestones, understand the questions, understand the assumptions, and they can comment on it. Okay? So writing, again, we could do an entire podcast on writing, on business writing, because it's something that I've realized the last few years. I'm like, oh, actually, this is super, super important. There's a lot to it. Yeah. Especially with our newsletter, right? Like writing's become a big part of my day to day. But I use also writing to communicate with clients, their bosses and them, on what's going on, the progress of the team. I use it to communicate to devs and brief them and designers on the feature that we're trying to build, why we're trying to build it. I use it to think through problems. I use it to literally write things down and just think them through and just really get into the problem that needs to be solved and why we need to be solving it, and structuring it into a memo that actually people can quickly understand and really digest. Writing's huge part of like soft skills, I would say I would keep writing up there, and then like presentation skills. I mean, obviously Tom Critch's SEO MBA has like really made this more of a thing in SEO, but both of both of those things are business consultancy kind of skills, right? You're trying to communicate recommendations, initiatives, structure your thoughts into a way that people can digest very quickly, and then putting it into slides is all about managing up, really. Most slides I do now are really just about getting buy-in from leadership or getting buy-in from like a manager or something, and just really quickly communicating, what we're doing, why we're doing it, what the problem is, the revenue, the ROI from this, and then if they want to, they can get into more detail into the document. But generally, that's the soft skills that I would recommend: writing and presentation. Powerful tools.
Well, and some of that you and I know is practice, some. But I'm wondering, because again, coming back to sort of unique background, I had an undergrad where I had to write a lot. It was a very small, weird school. I had to write a thesis to graduate. I've written 2 theses in my life. So like, I just have a lot of writing practice because I had a weird educational background. But again, not everybody has that. Well, and then I worked in an agency where I'm writing memos and like a lot of business writing. So do you have any tips around, other than practicing, what folks might do to improve their writing skills? Blog, obviously. I think everybody in our industry should produce content at whatever pace they can do it, because I'm at a very slow pace at the moment. But putting your thoughts on paper and sharing with other people somehow.
Yeah. So I guess there are 4 tools that I'd recommend. So number 1 is called copy work. Mm-hmm. So copy work is a practice that like historic copywriters used to use to get better at writing, right? It's very simple. You take a piece of writing that you find good, or like a good piece of business writing. Maybe it's your favorite like author, or maybe it's a favorite, maybe someone in your company writes really well. They do really good emails. Write it out, okay?
You mean like basically
copy literally write it out.
Yeah. Okay.
I do this all the time. It's how I feel I got better at writing the newsletter. And why would you do that, Adam? Simple. The reason why you do that is because the analogy is, and the theory is, to get better at playing an instrument, you play other people's music and you get used to the beats, right? Mm-hmm. I've never played an instrument. I'm terrible at instruments. But the theory, the application in writing is there, right? You write other people's writing to get to understand the patterns, this sequencing, and how good writing is done, right? You just get used to it. You literally 30 minutes in your calendar, and the best way to do it is by hand, apparently, but I do it by hand, and I do it. I have a Google Doc where I literally have it's called copy work, and I literally open it and I just look at some writing and I just start to write like short pieces. You don't have to write the whole thing, but just spend time to just feel the writing, like, and the sequencing, right? The other thing you need to do is use Hemingway. Okay, so Hemingway, if you don't know, is a free tool, completely free. Most writers will use it. Okay, it looks at the grade level of your writing. I think it's like US grade level, right? Mm-hmm. So it basically shows you, is your writing postgraduate level, or is your writing like grade 6, grade 8, right? Apparently you're looking for an average of grade 8, but I try and hit grade 6. So all of my newsletters, I try and hit like grade 6 writing, okay? And it's just, you would be surprised at how, like, just changing your writing to structure it in a way that is easier to read using Hemingway, and just better explain, just removing all these technical jargon, because, I'm guilty of it. We write this technical stuff, nobody understands it, and then we wonder why anybody is doing these things. I'm not doing these things, sorry. Well, part of writing and writing product briefs is making sure that the designer, the dev, the person I work, the client, understands this document. So it has to be both in plain English and a way but not like dumbed down, but written in a way that everyone in that stakeholder group can understand. The best way to do that, I use Hemingway. I just make sure that it's like between grade 8 and grade 6, and just make sure that I'm using, like, you have to kind of forget a lot of what you learned in school, because it's not about writing like like huge chunks of paragraphs. It's about structuring your writing so it can be understood fairly, being
quickly scanning.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone scans, like everyone. But you need, but the easier it is to read, the easier it is to understand. The more they'll comment, the more they'll ask questions, the more they're interested.
Yep.
Okay. Third thing is, like you said, just write. Just open a blog. You don't even have to share it with anyone. Just write. Just get used to the practice of writing these things out. And if you really don't want to start a blog, LinkedIn, Twitter, like lots of people I know just use Twitter and LinkedIn as a way to just get better at writing out their thoughts, their ideas, you know. Fourth thing, you want to use what is called the pyramid principle, right? And the MECE principle.
Yep.
So Pyramid and MECE are, I can't remember her name. Do you know her name? I've forgotten her name. But
no, it's referenced in the book. I always give people to read if they're new to web writing, which is called Letting Go of the Words.
Yeah.
Which is a very easy reference to pick up if you're new to all this.
Yeah. And basically the McKinsey and the Boston Consulting Group use these techniques to write out memos that are easily understood and structure your thoughts, your ideas into information that can be understood, right?
It's very similar to writing a press release. You get to the main point first, and then you get into the weeds as you get further down the document.
Exactly.
Is really the big takeaway there.
Exactly. But the pyramid principle always starts with writing. You're starting at the bottom and you're grouping information into relevant parts. Then you're going to the next level and you're grouping that information and synthesizing that information into 3 parts. And then, like you said, the main takeaway, right? And the MECE principle is you'll group things like into a shopping list, like, grouping it by the categories, right? It's easier to understand when you have a set of categories than it is just a random list of bullet points. A prioritized list of bullet points, numbered listicles with groups of information. And again, that's a lot of what I do is with writing is just trying to use all of those tools to get better at it, but also just help me structure my ideas. Again, it takes time, but if I was going to tell people, what to do to get better at soft skills, better communicating, better thinking, writing would be the way. And you don't have to write a blog to do it. I don't believe you have to do that, but there are definitely ways you can get better at doing it.
Those are great tips. And then if anybody's actually interested, we've got an episode about how to improve your public speaking skills, which would be the other part that I was just talking about. But what I love about this conversation is that here we are wondering if AI is going to take our jobs. And this entire episode, you're talking about things that AI cannot take away. It's all this business consulting. It requires a person herding the cats, communicating with people, right? That's not something that AI is ever going to become part of that. But I am going to give 2 AI tips on the other side. So if you're interested in dropping your the level of your writing, I've had some great success with ChatGPT. You just tell it, because I have a client who loves to create stuff and he's college educated and his target audience is not. So I've been able to take his stuff and get AI to rewrite it at a lower rating level, super fast, super easy. It's been successful. The other thing I do, which works to persuade him particularly, is that he wants all the copy, because we're writing copy for him. He wants all the copy to sound like him. So I've been able to train ChatGPT on his voice, drop the reading level, and just this last week, I have to tell people because it's a big deal, because he always edits stuff. Just last week, I pitched something over with no edits from him. He thought it sounded great.
Nice.
So 2 things. One, AI is not coming for your job if you do business level SEO work, business strategy level stuff. And 2, I recommend everybody use ChatGPT here and there to make your process easier and faster. Of course, just do the work, because they hallucinate and make crap up, but that's my standard.
Yeah, just to add to that as well. Remember that writing is thinking, right? ChatGPT. I've been asked can I use ChatGPT to do this? I'm like, well, you could, but the AI is doing the thinking for you, and it's not necessarily doing the right thinking. So it is like that. When I talk about business writing, what I'm really talking about is thinking through these problems and just getting your mind into the right place so you can communicate better to the client, the dev, PM team, because I guarantee you they will have a million questions, and a lot of them you'll need to answer up front, and you've already thought about them because you've written about it.
Right. And then that is the other bit I think we share, is that I have run a newsletter. I mean, 18 years of it being an SEO. I've been doing a newsletter the entire time because it forces me to process new information and explain it to others.
Mm.
So thank you all for being on my newsletter if you are, but you're not the reason I write it. I actually write it for me so I can process new information. So there's this value to like literally writing it down. I agree. It's huge. This has been an amazing episode with so much useful information right in the sweet spot. So this has been perfect. So I've got just 3 additional questions at the end that we always ask everybody. So the first one is, have you ever had, or currently, do you have like an aha moment that you had related to working with others or your audience that was kind of surprising? Something you did that surprised you recently?
Something that surprised me.
Related to persuading.
Oh, to persuading.
Yeah.
Or
their behavior.
Yeah. So the thing that surprised me was, although I know this information, but it always surprises me, is the way that some people will make decisions, but it's not really it's based on anecdotal evidence, but they'll just, they'll oh no, we've looked at this and we're going to do this, and I'm like, that's like 3 videos, like 5 minutes each. You're going to like rip up a lot of work that's been done to like test this out, and you're just going to ignore that. People are led by their emotions, not a lot of logic. That happens a lot. And yeah, just it always surprises me, because I'm quite logical, I guess. I'm like, well, I don't really see it in the data, but some people see it, because they want to see it, or because they think, oh, we need to do this because, I'll watch these few videos.
You've given me a whole other episode about how people make decisions based on their emotions. Because I had a sales role, I had one of those where I tried to sell this one elderly lady who blew me off and didn't even look at the demo of my software. And then I strategically sold everybody else in the state and then called her up again and said, hey, all of your friends are on my software. And she bought it sight unseen. Sometimes what the crowd is doing in trust matters a lot. It's weird. Yeah. It's not logical, but it's a thing. So you've got a bunch of other wins and resources. So one, have you had a personal win recently, or do you have any additional resources you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, so a win would be, I've had a bit of a aha moment in terms of, when like an idea hits you, it's like a product idea, just like smashes you in the face. I've had one of those like this week that's made me go, oh, it doesn't sound like a win, but for me, I'm like, oh, this, when you get excited about an idea, I consider that a win, right? Because it's just nice to have those excitable like projects. A resource to share with my audience. Does the SEO Sprint count?
It totally does. This is where we're going to move into how people can learn more about you. Go ahead.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. But I would just go to www.theseosprint.com, sign up for the newsletter. I also do a podcast. You can just sign up to the same place. And you can every week get 3 ideas on how to work better with product engineering teams. And it ranges from communication skills to little stories to little tips on how to like just incrementally, just bit by bit, help you improve and think of new ideas and new ways of working. Awesome.
Those are great. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sure this is going to be a very popular episode because there's a lot of great information shared.
Thank you, Katherine. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. To find out more about the podcast and what we're up to, go to digitalmarketingvictories.com. And if you like what you heard, subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Rate us, comment, and share the podcast, please. I'm always looking for new ideas, topics, and guests. Email us at digitalmarketingvictories@gmail.com or DM us on Twitter @DMVictories. Thanks for listening.